I want to tell you a story today that reveals the beauty of God's grace. It's a story that Philip Yancey told that really reveals the heart of our God and his grace towards humanity. He tells that there was once a young girl who grew up in a cherry orchard just outside of Traverse City, Michigan. Her parents were a bit old fashioned. They tended to overreact to her nose ring, her music, her length of her skirts. They grounded her many times, and she boiled over with anger. And she told her parents she hated them. And that night, she planned in her own mind to run away. She had visited Detroit, Michigan once on a bus trip with her church youth group and to watch the Detroit Tigers play baseball. And because she grew up hearing about the gangs and the drugs and the violence in downtown Detroit, she concluded that if she went there, that would probably be the last place her parents would ever look for her. So she ran away in the middle of the night to downtown Detroit. And her second day in Detroit, she meets this man who drives the biggest car she ever saw. He offers her a ride, he buys her lunch, he arranges a place for her to stay. He gives her some pills that make her feel better than she's ever felt before. She was right all along, she said. She was right in running away from her parents that kept her from all this fun in life. And the good life continued for a month, 2 months, and then a year went by. And the man with the big car she now calls boss teaches her a few things that men like. And since she's underage, men pay a premium for her. She lives now in a penthouse. She orders room service whenever she wants. Occasionally, she thinks about her family back home, but their lives now seem so boring that she can hardly believe she grew up there. She has a brief scare one morning as she noticed her picture printed on the back of a milk carton with the headline, "Have you seen this child?" Besides, most of her friends are runaways, and nobody will squeal on each other in Detroit. After a year, the year goes by, the first signs of illness appear in her body, and it amazes her how fast the boss turns mean towards her. She still turns a couple of tricks a night, but it doesn't pay for everything because all she earns now goes to her drug habit. And when winter blows in, she finds herself not sleeping in the penthouse, but sleeping on metal grates outside of this large department store. Dark bands start to circle her eyes, and her cough worsens. Once she lay awake listening for footsteps. All of a sudden, everything around her life felt and looked different. She no longer feels like a woman of the world. She feels like a little girl lost in a cold and frightening big city. She begins to whimper to herself. Her pockets are empty. She's hungry. She needs a fix. She pulls her legs right underneath her and shivers under the newspapers she piled on top of her coat. And then suddenly something jolts a memory and a single image fills her mind. She starts to remember the springtime in Traverse City when 1,000,000 cherry tree blossoms would bloom at once. She remembers her golden retriever running through the rows of trees in the orchard, chasing a tennis ball she would throw. She finds herself asking God, "Why did I leave?" And pain suddenly stabs in her heart. She thinks to herself, my dog back home eats better than I do. She is sobbing, and she knows in a moment that more than anything else in the world, she wants to go home. She went 3 straight phone calls to her parents, ended up with 3 straight connections to the answering machine. She hangs up. She doesn't leave a message. Finally, on the next call, she does leave a message. "Dad, Mom, it's me. I was wondering about maybe coming home. I'm going to catch a bus up your way, and it will be there about midnight tomorrow. If you're not there, well, I guess I will just stay on the bus until it hits Canada." Now, it takes about 7 hours for a bus to make it all the way from Detroit to Traverse City between stops. And during that time on the bus, she realizes all the wrongs in her plan to run away. And she starts to wonder, well, what if my parents are out of town and they missed the message? She thought to herself, even if they are home, they probably wrote her off dead a long time ago. Her thoughts are bouncing back and forth between those worries and the speech that she is preparing for her father. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. It's not your fault. It's mine. And she keeps rehearsing this over and over. She's not looking forward to seeing anyone. She's never apologized to anyone for years. As she looks out the window of the bus, staring at the snowflakes darting across the road, she had forgotten how dark it got at night in Traverse City. Ever so often, a road sign post would tell the miles left before she got to the city. Oh God, she thinks. When the bus finally rolls into the bus station, air brakes hiss. The driver announces in a crackly voice, 15-minute, folks. That's all we have here in Traverse City. She checks herself in her compact mirror. She licks her lips, wipes the lipstick off of her teeth. She looks at the tobacco stains on her fingertips and wonders if her parents will notice. She walks into the bus terminal, not knowing what to expect. And there, in the concrete walls and plastic chair bus terminal in Traverse City, stood a group of 40 brothers and sisters, great aunts and uncles, cousins, grandmother and a great-grandmother to boot, all wearing goofy party hats, blowing noisemakers, and taped across the entire wall of the terminal was this computer-generated banner that read, "Welcome home." And out of that crowd of well-wishers steps out her dad. She stares through her tears quivering in her eyes and begins her memorized speech. Dad, I am so sorry, I know. And Dad suddenly says, stop. Hush, child. We got no time for that. No time for apologies. You're going to be late for the party. There's a banquet waiting for you back at the house. Obviously, this story holds the message of a God that is a yes to the world. Jesus told a similar story, and we call it the prodigal son. You know, Lewis Smedes, once a professor at Fuller, wrote an entire book drawing these connections between our shame and the beauty of God's grace. He tells that throughout his own life, he felt like this glob of unworthiness. He says, what I needed more than pardon was a sense that God accepted me and owned me and held me and affirmed me and would never let go of me, even if he wasn't too impressed with what he had in his hands. The Apostle Paul also makes an astounding claim about the yes of Jesus and the beauty of God's grace. He goes, what then shall we say to all these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? May you come to Christ today and bask in his mercy and his grace and receive Christ in your heart and in your mind and follow him for all it's worth. Until next time, friends, God bless.